What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Ruben and Jessie podcast. As always, I am Jessie.
And I'm Ruben.
And if this is your first time, this will not be your last. And if you are back again, well, welcome, my friend. I am happy to have you here. What's going on, Ruben? How you living?
Living great, bro. Living great.
Mm, It is a great day to have a great day. And if you're
Always.
listening, I want you to say that back to yourself. It is a great day to have a great day. Amazing. Amazing.
we,
um,
we got a good one for you today.
we got a goodie, man.
We got a
We
goodie
got a
today.
good one, man. We're going to be talking about exercise. In maybe some ways that you, like shocker, health and fitness podcast talking about exercise. Yes, we are talking about exercise, but we're going to be taking it kind of a different route. So we're gonna like we've promised, we're gonna be start doing these series. I think
Series.
it's series, like the way you say food. You don't say foods. You just say the word.
Series.
Yeah, we start doing these series.
As you
Uh,
can tell, folks, we are not English majors.
no, we are not. We're not. It's why we do what we do. Um, uh, uh, so we're doing another series. This one's going to be around exercise, so we're going to be going deep. And this actually came about because of a book that Ruben is reading, which he's going to get into in just a second here. So we're going to talk about some of the findings in Ruben's book. And we're going to have another episode talking about our own evolution in exercise. And I think both of these things are going to be really exciting. One, because this book on exercise, as you'll hear from Ruben, is not really about reps and sets, but it's more about why do we exercise? Why do we have an affinity for exercise? Were we really built to move? If so, what were the advantages of that? Like, where did we move the best? How did we move the best? That's going to be like an anthropological account
Exactly.
on movement. And then the second piece is going to be, like I've mentioned, how we, from when we started exercising, just our first day in the gym or first day in the park or on our first run to where we are now. And that one I think is going to be really awesome for you guys to listen to, especially if you're just getting started in your fitness journey.
Exactly.
And you're thinking like there's so much to do, or like I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. There's all these different like accounts as to what to do and what not to do. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to figure it out. And, I'll be honest, neither did Ruben or I. We didn't know what
Exactly.
the fuck we were doing, and I have great stories to share on that. But now we do. And so we'll also give you, advice as to what we have in our movement practice today, and kind of how our philosophy has changed over the years as we've gotten older. So let's dive right into it, brother. Tell the people about this book that you're reading, what's it called, and what it's all about.
Right. So this book was not on my list. I mean, fun fact, usually I get a book from my list. This was a book that just came out of the blue. We were in a bookstore here where we live in Mountain View, California. I saw it and I was like, I obviously read the inside flap and was like, this is very interesting. I just bought it. It was like, hey, I never read a book on like movement and exercise, and like, where did this idea come from? So the book is called Exercised, with an ED at the end, by Daniel E. Lieberman. He's an evolutionary biologist who works in Harvard. He's also a runner, like a marathon runner. So I was like, I hate when like scientists try to talk about exercise and they don't exercise themselves. And it's like, that's stupid. But like as I was reading it, the inflab, I was like, oh, he understands. Like he does the work. Not to the extent of we do, but he does the work, right? And I want to give folks a underlying reasoning as to why we do anything, because this is important. It's kind of a theme in the book. everything we do is because of reproduction. And he talks about that in the book. Everything, every single thing an animal, like any animal you think of, does is because we need to reproduce. And if you look at certain animals who do reproduce, usually after they are finished, they usually die not too shortly after. But for us as humans, he also goes into this, there's another route, right? Women go into menopause, but they can live up to 30, 40 years after menopause, right? Same thing with men. We can reproduce well into our 70s. So we've gotten that with us. But I just want to mention that everything we do is for reproduction purposes. When you go down to the granular, like what's the meaning of life, if you really want to put it logically, is like we need to reproduce. Life wants to continue. Like life is the greatest, of all things, right? So that's kind of where the book kind of starts. And I see you went off mute, so you have something to say, Jesse.
Oh no, I just want to hear people hear me go when
Yeah,
I'm
got it.
in agreement with what you're saying.
Right. So where the book starts that really kind of like intrigued me and why I really bought it is the first two parts of the book is about inactivity and were we meant to be lazy?
Mm,
Because if you look at it like, and he uses calories as a unit of measure, it's like if you think about it, movement takes a lot, especially the more fitter you are, the more your muscles require caloric intake to stay that fit, if that makes sense to folks. Same thing, if you are overweight, it takes your body more calories to kind of stay that way, right? So what came up was like this study. I'm going to start with this study because I think it's important. So they they studied the Hadza. And for those folks who don't know who the Hadza are, they're kind of one of the last hunter-gatherer societies, I think, in Western Africa, if I'm not mistaken. And they've been studied on a lot. There's a lot of information of them out there. I think we've brought them up in our podcast due to Paul Saladino, who studies like the carnivore diet and all these things. Um, but there's been scientists that have lived with these people for years to study their life, right? Because obviously that's how our ancestors lived. These people are still living the same way. And let me tell you something. These people do not exercise, right? They don't have a pull machine. They don't have a chest press machine. They don't got weights hanging around, dumbbells, kettlebells, and all that. They don't have any of that, right? They don't do that, right? So with this study, they put heart rate monitors on the Hadza. They followed the women, and there are a few things that the women do, right? They obviously go out to forage. So they get berries, they get tubers, they dig, they walk about 5+ miles a day in the heat, right? Not only that, but these women are badass because not only are they carrying their babies in like a sling, sometimes when they forage all these foods, they're carrying that back to camp. So these women are badass and they're strong as hell, right? Like to be able to do that and walking, taking care of kids at the same time, like just amazing. Then they followed the men who obviously go out to hunt. The men, what they got from these heart rate monitors is they walk about 7 to 10 miles because they do tracking, right? When they find an animal, they track the animal to kill the animal and eat the animal, right? Not only that, but they do a lot of climbing because when they find beehives, they will climb the trees and they will gorge on honey, right? They will climb these trees, they'll put fire inside, get the bees out, pull the honeycombs out, and eat the honeycombs with the honey on it. So our average Hadza adult spends about 3 hours and 40 minutes on average doing light activities. So walking, maybe, creating arrows because they actually make arrows for their bow. Like they do very light activities, and then they spend about 2 hours and 15 minutes doing moderate to vigorous activities. So the running, they may have to climb. So they're using a pull motion, right, to pull themselves up, and all these things. And they're doing this every single day, right? And then he goes back to like Western society and like the amount of times we move, bro, it's horrendous. Like I think an average human adult who works like a desk job moves 30 minutes a day. in terms of like, you think about that 2 hours and 15 minutes moderate to vigorous activities, 30 minutes, maybe less.
Fucking nuts. That's
It's
nuts.
nuts. And then the other one, the light activities, we do less of that, right? Like light activities can be considered laundry and things of that nature. We're doing that for maybe hour max. And now with all these new efficient, you can say, ways of doing things, you can hire somebody to come do your laundry, right? I think Jesse used to do that in New York City. When you back in the day, you just, someone comes, they take your laundry and they do it and then drop it off clean and ready to go,
Yeah.
you know? All these services exist where it kind of takes it away from our hands. So we're doing less movement, we're sitting behind a desk. Something he brings up is like, if you think about it, we wake up, the most activity we have in the morning is like brushing your teeth, making your coffee, maybe, unless you go to Starbucks and get your coffee. You jump in a car, so you're sitting again. You drive to work, you get on an elevator, and then you go and sit in a desk for about 8 hours. You, on your lunch break, if, and this is like the average human adult, on your lunch break, you sit to eat, and then maybe you just sit and just play on your phone for the rest of your lunch break. Then you go back to sitting all those hours. Then you get back on the elevator, you get back in your car, you go home. You might move a little to cook, but most people, nowadays don't know how to cook, so they go to a fast food restaurant, get it done. They come home, they sit again to eat it, and then they take a shower, which is another activity, and then they go to bed. And then when you put that in essence, you're like, this makes sense why we're so
A
obese. This makes
terrifying
sense.
existence.
And then if you look at the data, as I was reading the book, and you think, and I'm at the last chapter, which is on exercise and disease and why exercise can actually really bring like your likelihood of getting Alzheimer's, heart problems, like all these issues that we're currently going through is like a mix of course, there's diet, the diet aspect, there's genetics, but also like fitness can actually thwart these things, right?
Mhm.
And kind of consistently brings it up over the book, like, hey, not doing activity is making you sick. Like,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna do another study where he talks about they did they basically left people in a bed for 8 weeks. I think it was 8 weeks, yeah. They just left people in a bed. They were like, we want to see what happens to the human body. And these were young 20-year-olds, moderately healthy. They were like, you're just going to be in bed. You're not going to do anything. The only thing you're going to get up to do is like shower. And that's it. So they left them in bed for, no, it wasn't 8 weeks. It was 4 weeks. They did 8 weeks was the exercise program. So they did 4 weeks of like no activity.
Yeah.
These people gained average of 20 pounds. They started having heart problems, kidney problems, depression, anger. The list goes on. Just put it like that. Just horrible shit started to happen because they weren't doing anything. Then the scientists brought them and did an 8 week exercise program, going outdoors, like jogging, lifting heavy weight, yoga, like walking, all these things. They didn't even finish the 8 weeks. Within 3 weeks, these people reversed almost everything.
Wow. Wow.
And by the end of the 8 weeks, they actually lost more weight than they put on.
Did they do anything to their diet differently between
So
both?
both
Oh,
during the diet, they weren't eating the worst foods, but they weren't eating, they were eating like your typical American
man.
like sad diet, right? Um, but just the fact that they were able to recover so fast by just having the right program
Mm.
and reversing, the sad, the depression, the anger they were experiencing, the heart problems they started to have. Um, if you watch like Super Size Me, the documentary that so many years ago, he didn't do no fitness. He just ate McDonald's every day, and you saw what happened to him, right? And then they also, during World War II, we were trying to figure out as a country what would happen if we dumb down our caloric intake to make sure that our soldiers overseas had enough food. So there was this study called the Minnesota Starvation Experiment. So what they did is they did 12 weeks of a diet of 3,200 calories, and the people on this study, their fitness was walk 22 miles a week and at least do 15 hours of labor a week. So labor was chopping wood, laundry, like all your typical things. And during this time, the every week the scientists measured their body fat, resting heart rate, red blood count, physical stamina, strength by grip strength, and their sperm count, at least for the men. Then for 24 weeks, they cut everything by half. So these people were getting 1,570 calories a day, but the same level of physical activity because they wanted to see our ancestors had to do shit like this, right? They had to like be low on calories and still do the work required, right? Get forage, go out to hunt, and all these things. So they're trying to see like how long before a person really starts breaking down. Didn't take that long, 3 weeks. It took, they did the studies. These people experience lethargy, depression, anger, nightmares, delirium, obviously losing weight the wrong way. Like you can see their skin and bones, like all these things that they had to cut the study short because they cannot let the people continue that way. So basically saying like we you know, like we need to be fit, but we also need to eat the right amount, and that there's a reason why, you know, there's a sense of inactivity that is actually part of it. But like when it comes to being inactive, is not sitting in a desk for 8 hours, for instance, right? When we sit, it's meant for us to move around. So we sit, we go into squat position, we lay down for a bit. If you look at the Hadza, this is what they do. They sit around, but they're constantly fidgeting and moving their bodies. They're not just sitting in one place for hours on hours. At maximum, if they're sitting upright on like a log or on their ass on the floor, is up to 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's like, and I know you do this as well, but in my living room, there's a small like coffee table. And I basically just started working there because I work on my computer, you know, for most of the day.
Exactly.
And now I sit on the floor. And when I'm sitting on the floor, like your body wants to constantly change its position. And I've noticed how like that's been super supportive for my lower back.
Yep.
It's been super, and it's also like I know that I'm just constantly moving my body around, you know.
Exactly.
I'm even if I'm not on the floor, like let's say I get tired of being on the floor. If I'm on the couch, I'm laying on one way, then I'll turn around, lay a different way.
Exactly.
I'll turn around and sit like this, you know, blah blah blah, all this shit. But like think about fucking school, right? Like you're literally as a child, as the most active being on planet Earth, like you are
Supposed to sit
forced
for
sit 8 hours. For 8 hours, you're supposed to sit there. And then you wonder why boys are fighting, why they're getting in trouble, why they can't concentrate. You know, it's like, what the fuck, you know? And then the food thing, I think, is also really interesting because something that it took me a while to really come to terms with. And even now, I notice it comes up, but it's so, not only is it like anti-intuitive, but it's also doesn't work. And I've, funny enough, actually seen the opposite be consistently true, which is like the idea of, okay, for me to like this idea of calories in, calories out, right?
right.
And like for me to lose body fat, I have to eat less food, right?
Deficit.
Yeah, I have to eat in a deficit, right? I have to eat less food. And I've actually like where I am now, right? Right now is the fittest I've ever been.
Yep.
I have not counted my calories
Me
in
neither.
probably over a year.
Yeah, same.
You know, and this is the fittest I've ever been. And I eat as much as I want, as
Yep.
often as I want. Obviously, I'm eating the right food, you know, like I'm eating what is proper. And as often, to clarify that as well, it's not that I'm not grazing constantly throughout the day. It's just like when it's time for me to have a meal, I'm having a whole ass fucking meal, you know? And sometimes if I want to double my portions, I don't even question it because what I found is actually what's more important is the training. Like if I'm training if I'm really in there, putting in that work. And the first time I actually heard of this concept was on Aubrey Marcus podcast. I forgot who he was interviewing, but they were talking about this.
Intuitive eating?
Huh?
What they talking about? Intuitive eating?
No, I think it might have been with the dude who started Primal Blueprint.
Oh, Mark Sisson?
It might have been him, but I know Aubrey said this, and it was funny because this was during a time where like, even though I was training, I knew I wasn't fucking giving it my all, in my training sessions. I was just working out to work out. And I remember Aubrey said this, and he's like, yeah, he's like, but I don't count my calories because when I go to the gym, I go to war. And I'm like,
Mm.
and I'm like that, but I didn't accept that at that time. Like, I was still in the mindset of like calories in, calories out, or like you have to eat less to burn fat. And it's like, no, you have to train hard and,
Hard.
and eat proper,
Exactly.
Yeah, eat until you're satiated, if you're training that hard, because who most of us who go into fitness don't really understand, who and really go all the way into it, don't understand how much food you actually
Need
end
to
up
eat.
need to eat, especially when you're eating clean. I think that's the biggest thing, is like when
Mhm.
you're actually eating clean, everything looks bigger because the food itself just looks more dense, but you don't understand how much less crap you're putting into your body because you're eating proper food. So I just wanted to comment on that as well. But please keep it coming with the studies, brother. You
Right.
dropping the knowledge, man.
I mean, it's crazy because like if you look at like one of the biggest things I wanted to read about was like why were we built to walk on two legs? Like,
Mm,
and he has a whole chapter on like why? Like why we went from, if you look at our, science right now, and it can change at any moment, guys. Like this is just something that's in the science literature right now, is that we evolved from our primates. We were on all fours, and this is a theory, they believe that because we needed to start reaching for things, we
mm,
needed to fight with our hands. They believe something happened where our brains got bigger and we started to like use tools. And they think that a big portion of the reason why we went to two legs is because we throw things.
mm,
So it's all about survival, right? Because we want to survive in order to reproduce. So we're weak. We couldn't go up to a fucking saber-toothed tiger and be like, I'm gonna go stab you with my spear. No, we used to throw the spear at the saber-toothed tiger because it will fuck us up. You know what I mean?
mm.
So based on like all the studies, the reason why we went to two legs is to build these tools so that we don't have to be in the face of these dangerous animals who are much stronger than us, sharp claws, big teeth, things we don't have. But what we had was cooperation with our other tribal, family, and the fact that we can throw.
Mm,
And that's what made us successful in these hunts. It was made us successful in order to protect one another, like all these different things on why we stood on two legs. Now, when we look at the human body, and this is what happened, because there's a whole chapter on like on walking, and like why walking, like it's been like it's so underappreciated. Like walking, if you don't like to work out but you want to start getting into fitness, walk. Like it's such a powerful tool that we as humans have, that we can walk and be steady because of the way our spines are built. And he
mm,
explains why when you look at like a gorilla, like they'll go on two when they're about to like fuck someone up, but they eventually go back on four because their back is not built that way.
mhm,
um and when we look at, when we're walking, we're more of endurance built animals. Like we're endurance built, we're not built for speed. The
mm,
fastest man alive was Usain Bolt. Like he's beat a bunch, and he talked about him in the book. He has like world records for a bunch of like different sprints, fastest human on the earth. But like birds can beat him. You know what I mean? Like there's birds that can beat him, no problem. Like in terms of a sprint. But what's beautiful is that humans were built for endurance because we used to track animals. And
mm,
what our power was the fact that, and get this, bro, like this blew my mind. Because we can sweat and cool our bodies down, it's why we can run like extremely long distances.
mm,
And he uses an example. It's not really a study, but an example is there's this race in like one of the middle states, one of those random states in America, that these runners run against horses.
Mm.
Check this out. We run against now. Horse will kick your ass. It'll blow you. Fuck that. Like that motherfucker is out. You know what I mean? So he said the race is a marathon, like a full marathon. You have to go up this hill and you kind of come down, right? He said, of course, as soon as the race started, the horses were like, out, beat. Like there was no chance. He was like, when he was running, he was like, there's no chance I'm going to beat these horses. But then they started running up the hill and they noticed that the horses were all stopped. The
Mm.
horses overheated. And he just, like all these runners he was with, they just blew past all these horses.
Wow.
And as they were coming back down, the horses started coming, but the horses no longer could gallop because they were overheated, they were tired.
Yes.
They don't have they sweat, but not the way we do because they have all that hair. But because we can sweat, we can continue to go. And no matter what, we can continue going because our body has a cooling mechanism that no other animal has. So
Mm.
that actually we are best at endurance because when we this is what not only that race that he was able to beat the horses, like a lot of runners were able to beat these horses because of this little facts. But also, if you think back in the day, our ancestors were able to beat out, buffalo and all these animals that we hunted back then because we could just tire them out. It's kind of what wolves do. Wolves do that as well. Although wolves are also another endurance animal. Wolves
Mm.
can run hundreds of miles in the span of a day. And they run insane speeds, but they
Mm.
mostly keep a decent, a stride when they run, but their bodies are built for endurance. And what they do is they tire these animals out and then they just start destroying them as a team, right? Humans did the same thing, bro. When he talks about it, we would tire them out. Then as a hunting pack, we would like surround them. So if they tried to do anything, we just stab them with a fucking spear, and that was the end of it. And now we had hundreds of pounds of meat for the village. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. It's crazy when you think about
Yeah.
why our bodies were built the way they were.
There's actually first learned about no, I didn't know about the horses thing. That's wild.
That
But
was what.
I first learned about what you're talking about here for like the outrunning of animals. And when I was working for the Czech Institute, there was a program that was put together by one of their master practitioners, who's Matthew Walden, and he put together a whole program called Walking Tall, and it was all about like the importance of feet and like your foot mechanics. And the first part of that program is talking about like the evolutionary process, like you're saying here. Why are we bipedal? Why are we on our feet?
Mhm.
And here, like something to add to like the wicked, like the wildness of this all is that it's for that same exact reason that we have hair. Like, I don't know if you mentions this in the book,
No.
but if you think about like especially the first iteration of the human being in Africa or Egypt, where the sun is like was good, you know what I mean? This is our cooling pad. The hair on why are most animals have hair all over their body, and we just have it in these like very like specific areas, and then we have all this hair
On our
right
head.
on top of our head, is because when the sun is beaming down, this is cooling our head so it doesn't overheat. So like next time you get a fancy haircut, just know this is your survival
That's funny
mechanism.
because when you go to banyas, Russian banyas,
Mhm.
all those guys and folks, if you don't know what a Russian banya is, it's just pretty much like you go to a sauna. It's a sauna, just a
Yeah.
really hot sauna. They
Mhm.
wear these caps,
Yes, exactly.
and if you don't have a cap, they highly recommend that you wet a towel with cold water and put it on your head when you're inside this 210-degree sauna to keep yourself cool.
Right. And those
So
hats are made of wool. Not wool,
yes,
but they're made of like some type of fur. You know what I
yes,
mean? Not just
exactly,
like regular like plastic hat or something like that. So
exactly.
um yeah, man. So just to add to that, like this is also a huge survival mechanism, is their hair on our head. And for all our bald brothers and sisters out there, don't worry. You know, we don't live in that world anymore. You don't need to outrun it. So you're good.
You don't have to outrun a horse or chase down 10 miles of a buffalo trying to tire him out, because this is what our ancestors did. Um, but yeah, like just like when I was going through this book and just like that blew my mind. Like the horse thing really blew my mind, and the fact that we are able to run these long distances. But the onset of that, and what people will probably like, is that we didn't do this often. So like the whole idea in like exercise was like yes, we do these things, but at what point does it become like unhealthy? So there's kind of it's like a U graph, right? There's kind of like there's like a sweet spot in the middle that we should be doing, and any more than that is actually not doing too much for us. And obviously inactivity, too much inactivity is really bad for us, right? So there's this like middle ground. But scientists have done many studies to try to figure that out, but obviously there's biodiversity.
Yeah.
Everyone's different. Everyone has a sense of how much activity they should put into their life. But the average recommendation is that you do at least, and they've done a lot of studies on this, 150 minutes a week of exercise, moderate, all the way up to vigorous of exercise.
So listen. I can't do math in my head, and I won't even try. So
the guy, we're pulling out the phones.
20. So okay, you're telling me they're saying 21 minutes a day is good enough.
But remember, moderate to vigorous. So he brings up at the obviously the last few chapters, he's like, what can I do? Like, what is some things that I can do? Well, one is like, do not be sedentary like all day. You need to move your body. Like that, he was saying that. He's like, you have to move. Like whether there's little movements, you go into the bathroom, you go into the kitchen, all these little things, cooking, taking a walk in the middle of the day. But when it comes to exercising, like if you're gonna do a 20-minute, do a HIIT workout. Like it's good to do a HIIT. You could do it in 20 minutes. He recommends that. He also brings up like you have to lift weights at least twice a week. And as you get older, you might have to do 3 days a week, because he's like, the problem we have is like there's runners out there who are like, I never lift weights, I don't need to do that. And it's like, well, you're gonna injure yourself. Because he also has this argument on that people make. It's like, I think it's like myth, and he puts a myth and he's like, running will ruin your knees. And it's like, not quite. Like it's the way you run. So if you decide to get into running, folks, please make sure your form is on point. Like obviously, Jesse, thank you for teaching me like how to run with proper form. Don't land on your heels. That's the most important thing. If you're landing on your heels, you're destroying your knees. The idea is to land on the forefront of the what's it called, Jesse? You know the name. It's like the forefront of you the one told me. It's not on your toes.
Your
plantar, yes. Yeah, like that plantar put. So when you run, you should be
the balls of your feet. You should land on the balls of your feet.
Yes, and it should land like it should look almost flat. And he uses like a graphic to kind of show you how you should run and like where your body. So you shouldn't be forward. You should be kind of upright and keep your spine upright, especially if you're going on endurance runs, right? But he says we are built to run, and that like they did many studies on runners and like onset of diseases, and actually like runners live much longer than people who don't run, and they've done like 30-year studies on this, because running actually prevents your 30 or 40% more likely to survive like from heart disease, from Alzheimer's and all these things, because of all the mechanisms and the good stress you put on your body. So running is actually this beautiful thing, like obviously we were meant to do, but more endurance than sprinting. Sprinting's cool if you're doing like HIIT and whatnot, but it's more of like an endurance sense. And he talks about his mom who lived to 93, and she ran like 5 miles almost every day for like 40 years. So things like that.
I wonder though what they put that up against, because like if it was just straight up bodybuilding and powerlifting, then yes, I would probably agree that that's running is better for longevity than bodybuilding and powerlifting, but like
Right.
the shit that we do now
Yeah.
of functional fitness and like doing movements that carry over into real life and like
I was gonna get into that.
okay, I'm just saying, well, that's what I'm saying, man. You know what I mean, it's like I don't know, I would say that just intuitively, like I would assume that is better for you than running.
A
um
hundred, 100%.
yeah,
And not saying to people, if you decide like, hey, maybe endurance running isn't my thing, like walk, like do
yeah, exactly.
long, beautiful walks in your
Or
neighborhood.
bike. I would also say bike, you know what I mean?
I don't think our
Uh,
ancestors biked, but you could do it.
no, but I'm saying it's still that mechanism of like low and slow, like it's low impact, and you could do it for miles on end.
And it's good for the heart. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you're in an endurance state because it's not like anything where you don't have to like pant. Like if you as long as you can keep a conversation during the exercise, doing things that like that often is really good for sure.
Exactly. And where the functional fitness comes in is think about, if you think about it, and I'm taking other books in here, like you look at the centenarians, like obviously a big portion of centenarians is like they have a genetic disposition to just live beyond 100, right? So
Mhm.
there's that. Um, and when you look at the lifestyle, a big portion is also their social life, and this has been proven over and over and over again. But also these people do not work out, but
Mhm.
they're walking up hills all day, they're lifting things, they're carrying things, which is a big part, which he also brings up, is like our ancestors always carried something. Think about it. When you went on a hunt, you were 10 miles from the village, you finally caught your animal. Guess who's lugging that back home? And you're
Mhm.
lugging like a good 60, 70, 80 pounds on your back. Obviously, it's spread amongst the hunting pack, but like you're carrying a good amount back to the village.
Mhm.
Women carry babies, they'll carry the food. I told you they'll carry water back to the village from the stream nearby.
That water is not light, bro.
That water is not light. He actually, like when they were living with I think it was called the San people. Forget, I think they're in Australia. His friend tried to do what the women in this tribe did. So they'll
Mhm.
go 4 miles from village to fill up a whole basket of water that was 40 pounds. While they were carrying a baby in a sling, they would put this water on their head, hold it with one arm, and walk back with this and the baby.
Some gangster shit, bro.
Gangster shit. And these women that did this were like in their 40s and 50s. So one of the guys he was on, one of the scientists he was with was like, I'm gonna try it as well. But he didn't have a baby to sling on, right? So he just was gonna do the water thing. And comically, this guy was like holding it with two hands, couldn't balance. The water was sloshing everywhere, barely made it back. He was like panting, almost died. This woman comes back, chill. I was like, yo, badass. Like these women are badass in the Sand tribe, and I think it's Australia. But it's like things like this. Like we were meant to like carry things around, which is like, I mean, something I was telling Karina, as soon as we move, I'm like, I'm getting a weight training vest and I'm gonna fucking walk around with that shit everywhere. And they have
Mhm.
these ones that are actually like you can put under your clothes. They're very like sleek. I think it's from Go Ruck. From
Oh yeah.
they have
Go
these new
Ruck.
ones, yeah, that you can just, it's very small. You just put the plate in and you just walk and do whatever you're gonna do, hike. So I'm gonna start implementing that into my day to day.
Go Ruckin', bro.
Exactly. Like I'm gonna also get a rucksack so I can put fucking 100 pounds on that motherfucker and just walk, right, for conditioning. Like this is the shit our ancestors did, and this is
Yes.
why people think that they like the average lifespan for a hunter gatherer was like 30 or 40 years. That's because the data is skewed because we were also hunted. We were hunted by animals in the fucking African safari. And lions, tigers, like everything was hunting us wherever we lived. So that's why our lifespan was so short. But
Mhm.
the old every tribe had an old person that lived well into their 80s, 90s in this place, who were the wise elders, right? And
Yeah.
this is where I go back to the what I started with, and I'll stop here. Our reproduction, they believe, and this is theory, that the reason why these old people live long is women live longer after menopause is because in these tribes they help the mothers, and a
Mm,
big portion of that help, for the Hadza, for instance, is while the woman is nursing. So think about it from an energetic perspective. They need more calories because they're nursing, right? So they actually need 400, at least the data says 400 to 500 calories more, so they could breastfeed the babies. They do this even though they're going out to forage, dig for tubers and all these things. The grandmothers have them chill. Yes, they can still talk shit and gossip. This is what actually women do in the Hadza. These grandmothers are in there digging more, like I think they said 30% more than the women who are nursing. They're getting these tubers, they're carrying everything back. And mind you, these are 50, 60-year-old ladies doing this.
wow, that's awesome.
And the old men who go out to hunt, they obviously are more experienced. So they're the teachers to the young hunters.
Mm,
They're still out there going 7 to 10 miles, mind you, 50, 60, 70-year-old men, climbing these trees to get the bees, which, funny enough, they actually die a lot more because they fall off the trees. Because again, unfortunately, as we get older, our strength diminishes. So like they'll lose like grip or whatever the case may be. But the fact that they're out there just like kicking ass is like, wait. So the whole argument he was basically saying is like retirement is the stupidest thing we ever came out. Like this whole
yeah,
idea of retirement, put your feet up, I'm gonna just do like the nothing. It's like,
you die, bro.
no, you're gonna die. Like
You
stay
die.
active, do your thing. Like the most successful people that stay, and obviously I think there's a whole diversity aspect here, like for some reason why wealthy people get into exercise versus like non-wealthy people, and there's this whole argument as well that I think belongs in this space,
Mm,
because you're not thinking about it when you're like, I need to figure out how I'm gonna get food on my table. So
yeah.
there's that, but it's like, how can we bring that more into those communities?
Mm,
um but yeah, like it's pretty crazy that these people, old as they are still out there kicking ass and moving their bodies. um and that's why we're meant to live beyond just our reproduction, is to help our offspring, our grandchildren, learn from us. And that's why life in this sense, the universe, whatever, wants to keep us here on this earth a little longer. Which is why I think the conversation of like setting a goal for your fitness is not just about like having a nice body.
mm,
That's just like a nice side thing that happens when you start getting into fitness. But it's more of everything else that come, like the beauty that comes from exercise, and the data shows it. We feel it. Like I know you love to work out because it makes you feel a certain way. I love to work out because it makes me feel a certain way. But not only that, but it's just there's so many wins. There's no cons almost, right? Yes, it's uncomfortable for an hour, but you get beyond that after a few months of doing it, you'll be like, oh, I know I'm gonna
yeah.
be comfortable.
There's this, that's not like, the fact that you bring that up makes me think about where it is now is like, I don't even see it. It doesn't even feel like discomfort. I mean, it is discomfort. Like if you're training hard, it is discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like there's some like the discomfort is so comforting. Like just to be like, ah, fucking yes, like, this is hard and I love it, like there's something about that is so rewarding and so
Mm-hmm.
like, it's like chasing the pump, it's like I'd be lying if I said that there isn't a possibility that I have an addiction to exercise. So you know what I mean? Like I look forward to it
He talks about
all.
exercise addiction in the book too.
Yeah, so I mean, if you want to talk about that at all for a little bit, because like, I mean, I wouldn't say I am, because after I have my training session,
You're
it's not
not.
like I'm like, I need to move my body again, It's like, but there is this thing where like I wake up and before I jump into my work day, before I get anything done, before I talk to you, I don't even want to fucking talk to you until I've had my
Put
my
it in.
sacred hour of
Hmm.
fucking, just that place, to go into that place, into that zone for my hour, during the day, during the morning. At least that's what, when I train. Um, and that's the other thing. I don't call it working out. I call it
Right.
training. I'm
Right.
training for life. I'm training
Exactly.
for whatever the day is bringing me. I'm priming myself, because then I come back, my muscles feel nice and full of blood. My body
Mhm.
feels nice and just strong, and you know like the progressiveness of it. There's
Right.
there's so many awesome things about it, and the bonding experience too, like
Right. That's
doing it with others. I'm sure he talks about that as well. Like,
yes. Big part of it.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, if you think as I've been talking this whole time, when I go back to the hunter gatherers, the women are going together to forage, right? The
Mhm.
men are going in a hunting pack. They're doing this together. Like
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an insane person. I like to work out alone. I enjoy it, right? But the idea is like if people are probably thinking like "Fuck, like I've tried over and over again, I can't figure it out. Like I just don't like it. It's so uncomfortable. You just haven't built, and he talks about this, you haven't built the dopamine receptors necessary in your brain to make you want to go out and do it. Because I'm sure, Jesse, you've been in this situation. I don't know, maybe you taken a trip, you spent some time with family, so you didn't work out for like 3 or 4 days. How do you feel after those 3 or 4 days?
I'm itching, bro.
Right.
I'm clawing at the door. Like,
Right.
I need to go immediately.
Exactly. Because you've been doing it for so long that your dopamine receptors are not receiving that
Mm,
like the
rush.
dopamines, right? The rush from when you do that. So obviously you start feeling like "Fuck, like I can't wait to get back so I can put a nice pump in or get a run in or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Like it literally, it's not exercise addiction to that extent, but the
Mm,
body literally builds mechanisms to make sure that you do this. Like,
mm.
and the body is this beautiful machine, but it can be adaptable to your advantage, and it can also be adaptable to your disadvantage,
Absolutely.
which is why when you're not doing anything, you become a lazy couch potato. Why it's so hard to work out, it's because you haven't built those receptors yet.
Yeah.
What he talks about in the book, that the best way to get into fitness, and he uses this company in, I think, Sweden. The CEO, mandatory every Friday at 11 a.m. The whole company works out.
Whew.
Mandatory, bro. Mandatory.
I like that.
I like that too. But then what the author was saying was like, here in America, because we have a constitution and all these things, people have the right to be lazy. And it
Ah,
sucks to hear that. When I read that, I was like, no, they don't. No. And it makes me sad, but it's true. We live in a democratic society. So like what companies have done, and this is what he talks about, is like they've tried their best. So you have health insurance, like my company, for instance. If you go to the gym, you can actually get reimbursed for the cost. If I take a training session with a coach, I can get reimbursed for the cost of up to, I think right now is $400. It went down because of the pandemic and everything, but you get reimbursed. So they're trying different things. So because companies, if you're more sicker, they have to pay out insurance for you, even though you pay a small fee. The bulk of the payment of health insurance is coming from your company wherever you work. If
yeah.
you're a fucking entrepreneur, you're probably paying full amount for your health insurance. That's about $1,000 to $2,000 a month for a single person. I know this because my dad's owns his own company, has his own health insurance, and his health insurance is very expensive. With a company, you're just paying a certain percentage of that cost, and the company is hedging the rest of that cost. So it's kind of funny how these companies are trying to push people to actually be healthy. They are trying. I mean, not the best way. Like, as health coaches, I'm like, you're doing this all wrong. And you're like, you're not doing good enough because you're
Mhm.
making it more expensive. The more sick people are, and the more they have to visit doctors, the more they have to get medication, it becomes more and more expensive for the insurance providers to pay off this person's like issues. But you can literally prevent almost half of all diseases through exercise, and then the other half through diet. Like it's so crazy. Some of it is genetic, but it's just wild when I was reading this. I'm like,
Even genetics, like Anyway, don't even get me started, bro.
That's true.
This
I
will be
know.
another 2 hours of yelling.
Right. But I think if people are finding it hard, it's just like if it, as you mentioned, like doing it with other people, powerful effect, a powerful effect. Even if
That
it's
doesn't even mean it doesn't even mean you have to work out with them. Like it
mm-hmm,
could be that you guys are going on a hike together. You know,
mm-hmm,
you guys are let's go for a walk in the park.
and
You
talk,
know
yeah.
what I mean? Like instead of grabbing dinner or being like, let's go for a walk. Like that's what I'm doing today. I'm going for a walk, I'm grabbing dinner, then I'm going for another walk. You know, it's like just making movement part of your social life. You
Boom.
know, boom.
Exactly. If you read the Line Method by Aaron Alexander, he talks about this. It's like, how do you implement movement in your day? And it's like the smallest movements too. It's just like sitting on the floor. You have no choice to move, as you were saying earlier, Jesse. You're like, you know, your body's like, oh, I need to move right now. So you'll pivot to this side, you'll pivot to that side, you'll lay down, you'll lay on your stomach, you'll lay on your back, you're moving, right? But other things he recommends is like put like in your cabinet instead of putting things low, maybe put it on the second cabinet. So you actually have to reach for it, which is
Mhm.
a big aspect because our ancestors did that a lot. They reach for things in trees, right? So you're moving your body,
Mhm.
walking, um, putting a pull-up bar on a door that you constantly pass. And he's like, literally, you can do a pull-up, but literally just go and just swing on it because our ancestors also swung on trees. Like, you know, we climbed trees, we swung on them. So how can you make your environment movement friendly, right? I keep a exercise ball all the time out because sometimes I'll just go and I'll stretch my back on it. I'll do a few stretches on it in between like calls for work. Um, I'll pick it up and like implementing more play. Like this is, and he has a whole chapter on sports and why sports is so popular is because it's exercise in play form. So like,
Mhm.
how can you put more play? And it's like what I liked about Aubrey Marcus talks about in his book, Own the Day on Your Life, is like, you know, have a play fight with your partner in the morning. Like wake up. That's movement. You're play fighting, right?
Yep.
If you have a dog, you can have a good time with that dog. Go on the floor, fucking, you know, play fight with the dog. Pull the toy with them, and like you're doing a pulling motion while they're pulling back, right? And you're doing this tug of war. Like there's so many ways to add movement in your day. You just have to be creative about it. Even in your car, there's certain ways you can put your seat. He has this in the book. Certain ways you can put your seat in mirrors where it forces you to like keep a straight back, but also move your neck in certain ways. So you're constantly you're not gonna have like office desk neck where you're like this, like, you know, like there's so many ways to implement movement in your day. And I think we'll probably have a whole conversation about this on the next one.
Mhm.
Right now we just wanted to set the stage.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's what we are meant to do.
I love it, man. Thank you for that full on dissection. Is that was you put in that work on these studies. So
I wrote them all out and highlighted them. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think that's a great place to pause and end it here. And everyone, I would recommend listening to this again because there was a lot said that you
word.
maybe glossed over or didn't really feel the magnitude of. And I think when we're thinking about our whys for why we do what we do, there's a lot here that was said to really help shape why we move and why movement is important. And when we're not moving, what we're actually doing to our bodies or
Mm-hmm.
not doing to our bodies. So, and um, yeah, we'll put the title of the book in the show notes as well for you
Yep.
guys to check it out. And then next time we will be digging into our own fitness journeys and how that's evolved over time. So please stay tuned. And as always, appreciate you for listening, like, comment, subscribe,
Do all
this
the
is
things.
the YouTube channel, but the same things apply here. Share this with a friend. Um, yeah. Any parting words, Ruben?
Nah, I just say hopefully y'all listen. I would say after listening to this, go take a walk. Or listen to this while you're walking.
Hey, hey, I like that.
I like that.
All right. All right,
Have a
y'all.
good one, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in. Peace.